to establish the Cotton Industry Development Board. Upon reconsideration, the Senate passed the National Assembly amendments to the bill on Wednesday, 4th December 2024, thereby concluding its bicameral consideration. This paved way for presentation of the bill to His Excellency the President for assent in accordance with the provisions of Article 112(2) of the Constitution. However, members, I wish to convey to the House that I have since received a memorandum from His Excellency the President referring the bill back to the Senate for reconsideration in accordance with the provisions of Article 115 of the Constitution. In the memorandum, His Excellency the President has expressed reservations on the establishment of an additional regulatory entity, noting that such an entity, as envisaged in the bill, would contribute to the proliferation of state corporations and undermine the ongoing reforms on the rationalization of state entities. In light of the foregoing, honorable members, and noting that the bill originated in the Senate, the House will await conclusion of consideration of the President's memorandum on the Cotton Industry Development Bill 2023 by the Senate before considering the President's reservations. In the meantime, I direct the clerk to circulate the memorandum from His Excellency the President to all members to familiarize themselves with its contents. The House is accordingly informed. Thank you.
Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader, Owen Bayo.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, February 19th, 2025, in the afternoon sitting. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statements for the year ended 30th June 2024 and certificates therein for the following institutions. A. Annual report and financial statements of Kibabii University for the financial year ended 30th June 2022. B. Financial statements for Mortgage and Car Loan Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2024. The Kenya Medical Laboratory Technicians and Technologies Board, KML-TTB. D. State Departments for Technical, Vocational, Educational and Training. E. National Land Commission Housing Scheme Fund. F. State Fund for Cooperatives. G. State Department for Investment Promotions. H. Technical and Vocational Education and Training Authority. I. Teachers Service Commission. J. Kenya National Commission on Human Rights Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme. K. Kenya Universities and College Central Placement Service Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme. L. Center for Mathematics, Science and Technology Education in Africa Semester. M. National Research Fund. N. State Department for East African Community Affairs. And finally, Honorable Speaker, State Department for Trade. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay.
Thank you, Owen. Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Kimani.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, the 19th of February, 2025. Report on the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning on its consideration of the Insurance Professionals Bill, National Assembly Bill number 13 of 2024.
Thank you. Next.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Chairman, Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion. That this House adopts the joint report of the National Assembly's Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs and the Senate Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on its consideration of the report of the National Dialogue Committee, NADCO, and the report of the Multisectoral Working Group on the realization of the 2/3 gender principle laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 16th January 2025. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopt the report of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security on the inquiry into the state of security in 6 counties of North Rift of Baringo, Elgeyo Marakwet, Turkana, West Pokot, Samburu, and Laikipia, declared as disturbed, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 13th August 2024. I lay.
Thank you. Member for Nyandarua County, the Honorable Faith Gitau.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to give notice of the following motion. That aware that the Kenya Roads Act 2007 provides for the establishment of road authorities responsible for, among other functions, the management and development of roads under their respective purview, and for developing and providing adequate transport infrastructure that guarantees safe and efficient movement of people, goods, and services across the country and beyond. Further aware that the first schedule of the Kenya Roads Act provides for the classification of national trunk roads into classes A, B, and C, recognizing that the fourth schedule to the Constitution assigns to the national government the function of the construction and operation of national trunk roads, noting that a significant portion of highways in the national trunk road network are currently single carriageways, concerned that single carriageway roads pose multifaceted challenges, including traffic congestion during peak periods, which limits movement of people, goods, and services across regions, and increases vulnerability to road accidents. Further concerned that the lack of footbridges and safe pedestrian crossing areas on these high traffic roads has been a leading contributor to the surge in road accidents in the recent past. Cognizant of the duty of the government to provide a reliable transport system for efficient traffic management, economic development, and bolstering of interconnectivity among all regions in the country and beyond. Now, therefore, this House resolves that the government, through the Ministry of Roads and Transport, undertakes an expansion program of national trunk roads with a view of upgrading all classes A, B, and C roads in the country from two-way lanes to dual carriageway, one-way roads with the necessary infrastructure that include footbridges, safe crossing zones at regular intervals, proper drainage systems, and other requisite infrastructure for their optimal operation. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Faith. Member for Lego Songa, Samuel Atandi. Is not in. Member for Mwingi West, Charles Ngusia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move to give the notice of the following motion. Aware that sports play an integral role in promoting cultural heritage, national identity, national development, the well-being of the people, and sustenance of livelihoods, particularly of the youth, appreciating that sessional paper number 3 of 2005 provides a framework for sports development and operationalization in the country. Further appreciating that the sector plan for sports, culture, and arts 2018 by the Ministry of Sports, Culture, and Arts mainstreamed sports development in the third medium-term Plan 3 for 2018 to 2022 under the Kenya's Vision 2030, recognizing that the Vision 2030 aims at capitalizing on the country's international reputation as a world-class sports powerhouse whose sportsmen and women have won international accolades and recognition, especially for the prowess in athletics, concerned that despite bringing honor and national pride to the country, most of the sportsmen and women face a myriad of challenges such as lack of physiological support and social protection, hence pushing many to alarming levels of mental health challenges during their career and even after retirement. Noting that sessional paper number 3 of 2005 contemplated appointments as goodwill ambassadors and establishing contributory insurance and savings schemes, among other forms of motivations. Concerned of the fact that the prospect of receiving state recognition, financial grants, and other perks inspire sportsmen to push their limits in attaining their full potential, as fostering a collective sense of pride in sports achievements. Now, therefore, this House urges that the government, through the Minister of Youth Affairs, Sports and Arts, develop a policy and standardized sports reward scheme for recognizing the achievements made by the sports person in internationally recognized competitions through 1. Financial rewards of 6 million for setting new world records, Kenya shillings 4 million for gold medalists, Kenya shillings 3 million for silver medalists, and Kenya shillings 2 million for bronze medalists. 2. Non-financial motivation, including facilitation with issuance of diplomatic passports for established sportsmen and women, appointment as as goodwill ambassadors and conferring national honors and privileges. And 3, establishing a medical cover and post-retirement social protection scheme, including establishing contributory insurance and savings schemes to support sportsmen who retire from active sporting due to injuries or age. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member for Alego Songa, has he come in? Matter deferred. You'll place on the order paper tomorrow. Next. Next.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honorable members, before we get to that, allow me to acknowledge Allow me to acknowledge the presence of a delegation from the Council to the Africa Colloquium of Legal Counsel to Parliaments, sitting in the Speaker's Gallery to observe the House proceedings. The delegation comprises of 5 legal counsel serving in the parliaments of Libya, Sierra Leone, and Eswatini. The delegation is in Kenya for a council meeting to deliberate on various policies and implementation programs aimed at realizing the effective and efficient delivery of legal services by councils serving in parliaments in Africa. On my own behalf and that of the National Assembly, I welcome the delegation to the National Assembly and wish them well. In the Speaker's Gallery, we have the following institutions: Mulima Kenya Secondary School from Kieni East, Nyeri; Masai Mara University from Narok County, Narok North; Ligao Mixed Secondary School from Embakasi East, Nairobi; and in the Speaker's Gallery, we have Siakago Girls High School from Mbere North, Embu. On my behalf and on that of all members of this House, we welcome those schools to the House of Parliament. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Member for Isiolo County.
Honorable Speaker, I rise to request for a statement regarding transparency and accountability in the management of the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 44-2C, I rise to request for a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Sports and Culture regarding transparency and accountability in the management of the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund. Honorable Speaker, the Constitution of Kenya empowers this House to oversee the operations of all state organs, including funds established under the Public Finance Management Act. Further, Article 229 mandates the Office of the Auditor General to audit and report on the accounts of all national government funds and authorities, including SASDEF. However, there has been a public outcry regarding financial mismanagement and lack of transparency in the administration of national revenue allocated to the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund and its associated entities, notably the Kenya Academy of Sports. Honorable Speaker, it is against this backdrop that I request for a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Sports and Culture on the following. 1. Criteria used by the Kenya Academy of Sports and the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund in identifying, assessing the needs of sports development in Kenya and the measures in place to ensure equitable distribution of funds across all regions. 2. Reasons as to why the quality of preparations, the playing field, the sport gear, the entire organization of sports events do not reflect the budget allocated for their procurement, despite the seemingly large amounts of financial resources directed towards this purchase. 3, a comprehensive report detailing the breakdown of the funds allocated to SASDEF and spent on sports-related activities for the last 2 financial years, including the distribution across different regions in Kenya. And 4, a list of all companies contracted to supply playing kits and other sports equipment, along with detailed explanation of the tendering process followed. And lastly, a forensic audit to be undertaken by the Office of the Auditor General on the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund for the last 2 financial years, including an audit of all companies contracted to supply goods and services, and be submitted to the Departmental Committee for consideration. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Chair of Sports, Wanyama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the depth of the statement, I request that we are given 3 weeks, because again, we are having the policy statement that we are looking at. We'll be able to respond after 3 weeks.
How many weeks?
3 weeks.
3 weeks, let's order that. Karemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. This is a request for a statement regarding the absorption of universal health coverage, UHC, contract staff. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44-2C, I wish to request for a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Health regarding the employment terms of nurses and the Universal Health Coverage, UHC, program. Honorable Speaker, in June 2020, the Public Service Commission employed approximately 2,700 nurses on contractual terms to serve in hospitals and strengthen health service delivery and the Universal Health Coverage, UHC program. However, despite performing similar duties as their counterparts in permanent and pensionable terms, UHC nurses receive significantly lower salaries and do not receive allowances such as nursing service allowance, health risk allowance, and hardship allowance. This disparity in remuneration contravenes the principles of equal pay for equal work, as stipulated in Section 5.5 of the Employment Act, Cap 226. Honorable Speaker, on 3rd of August 2021, the Public Service Commission, PSC, issued a circular committing to harmonize the terms of contract workers with the intention of transitioning them to permanent and pensionable employment. However, up to date, UHC nurses have not been absorbed into the service. Notably, their contracts lapsed in June 2023, and the Ministry of Health renewed it for a further 1 year. There is need to finalize their absorption into permanent and pensionable terms without undue delay to ensure continued service delivery within the healthcare system. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Health on the following. 1, a comprehensive report on the measures taken by the Ministry of Health to address the disparities in remuneration and allowances between UHC nurses and those on permanent and pensionable terms. 2, update on the consultations between the Ministry of Health, the Public Service Commission, and the county governments regarding the conversion of UHC contract nurses to permanent and pensionable terms. And lastly, specific timelines for the absorption of UHC nurses into permanent and pensionable terms, as well as details on the number of nurses already absorbed. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Health. Is it health? Wapi, Dr. Bukose? Cynthia? That's your committee? Inform your...
Books would be appropriate, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Next.
Order number 8, the Equalization Fund Administration Bill, Senate Bill number 14 of 2023, second reading, resumption of debate.
Honorable members, records show Kimani Kuria, Chair, moved the motion. Benjamin Lagat seconded. Question proposed. So it's a fresh bill. I see the first name here is Wilberforce Oundo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Oundo, just take your seat for a minute. Before you take your floor, allow me to acknowledge in the Speaker's Gallery High Ridge Girls Secondary School from Westlands, Nairobi. On your behalf and on my own behalf, we welcome the students to the House of Parliament. Oundo, go on.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the Equalization Fund Administration Bill 2023, Senate Bill number 14 of 2023. Honorable Speaker, the essence of the bill is literally to repeal the Public Finance Management Equalization Fund Administration Regulations 2021. Let me admit, Honorable Speaker, that I was not around when the committee chair moved the bill. I've not had a chance to look at the report. But obviously, everybody would want to ask, why fix what's not broken? We do not seem to have been told precisely what is wrong with the regulations and whether failure to implement and actually get the works done as contemplated under the relevant provisions of the Constitution is a result of a faulty in the regulations. But nevertheless, Honorable Speaker, what we see here is just a creation of unnecessary burdensome bureaucracy. Unnecessary bureaucracy, and yet the Equalization Fund was supposed to be more or less like a rapid response fund to address marginalization, inequitable distribution of development that has got a historical aspect since session paper number 6 of 1966, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the bill creates a bureaucracy, let me state so. And Honorable Speaker, if you look at the essence, the objective of the bill is to provide for administrative structures for the management of the equalization fund, to establish an advisory board, and for connected purposes. Honorable Speaker, this presupposes that there are no administrative structures. Yet you have got county governments with relevant structures to implement projects. We have line ministries at the national level with relevant structures to implement the projects. We already have an established NG, National Government's Consolidated Development Fund, that can actually be delegated to undertake these projects that are being mentioned here. So, Honorable Speaker, my first point of concern, this creates unnecessary bureaucracy that needs to be cured during the committee of the whole House. Honorable Speaker, when you go to clause 12.3, Honorable Speaker, again, as I say, it's an administrative burden, baggage. You find that you have to spend not exceeding 3% of the approved annual allocation to the fund to run the secretariat, which again is just made up of government technocrats, civil servants, and public servants. Essentially, Honorable Speaker, this will be an amount of double pay, which you could have saved that amount of money to undertake other programs. Honorable Speaker, in the High Court ruling concerning the constitutionality of NGCDF, the High Court noted that the County Assembly and Parliament in extent are not implementing agencies. They do not belong to the executive, so they cannot implement any government programs. Honorable Speaker, under clause 17D, among the members who will establish the County Technical Committee is a representative of the relevant County Assembly. The question is, what is the role of the County Assembly in executing executive functions? So that's a matter that needs to be addressed at the committee of the whole House. Honorable Speaker, the bill contains other issues, typos, which I can attribute to the failure of the Senate to understand the structure of national government, which we can correct at the level of the committee of the whole House. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, there is a fundamental issue that we need to address. There was the first policy concerning equalization fund that ran into headwinds, so it was never implemented. Secondly, there's the second policy that is supposed to be implemented, that was supposed to be implemented under the repealed or the proposed repealed regulations. It has not worked, Honorable Speaker. It is therefore important that the Commission of Revenue Allocation needs to come up with a third policy in view of the extended period in the event the bill passes through and becomes an act of Parliament, so that those pockets of marginalization in an otherwise seen to be potentially positive areas can be included in the same as part of the marginalized area. Honorable Speaker, Busia County as a whole is an disadvantaged county, yet you find not more than 5 wards are included among the marginalized areas. You find some areas where there's rainfall failure and there's food scarcity, like Iwiri ward of Funyula constituency, and sections of Nambawota Nambuk ward, as well as Agenga Nanguva ward, that have not been included. So we urge the Commission of Revenue Allocation to basically have a fresh look as we roll out a third policy that will enable equity and fair distribution of these funds that were meant to attend and bring equity in the entire country. With those honorable remarks, Honorable Speaker, I seek to second, subject to the reservation I've raised, which will address at the committee of the third House.
Are you seconding or supporting? The bill
Sorry,
was already
Speaker.
seconded.
I support your reservation, with which we'll make amendments at the committee of the whole House. Thank you, Speaker.
Phyllis Barto. Have you keyed in for this bill?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I was not to speak on this one.
on this particular one.
Those members who have not keyed in for this bill, log out so that I only deal with those who want to speak. Waluke? John Waluke? Makali Mulu? You want to speak to this?
Yes, Honorable Speaker.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Honorable Speaker, thank you very much for this time. Honorable Speaker, I want also to support this bill on equalization fund. And Honorable Speaker, as I support, I think this fund, Honorable Speaker, had a time limit in terms of when it should be implemented. And over time, Honorable Speaker, we have faced a lot of challenges. And some of the challenges is what Honorable Udo has actually mentioned. But Honorable Speaker, the first challenge this bill, which this fund suffered and which I think has moved to the future, we need to really look at is the issue of underfunding. The Constitution is very clear what percentage should be allocated to this fund. But over time, this House, through the Budget Committee, after getting proposals from the executive, has always passed figures which are below what the Constitution says, Honorable Speaker. And even when the amounts are allocated, Honorable Speaker, we go to an extent of amending the same figures during the supplementary budget. So, Honorable Speaker, you find that over time we've not managed to allocate what should be allocated. I remember last year, Honorable Speaker, there was the issue of do we really factor in the arrears into the budget if you were to calculate on an annual basis what should have gone to the fund. And Honorable Speaker, the answer was that even though we wanted to cater for the arrears, it was about somehow impossible because of the existing budget deficits. So, Honorable Speaker, if we are really serious on this issue of equalization fund, the first thing we should be able to discuss is funding it as required by the Constitution, Honorable Speaker. The second matter, Honorable Speaker, is even where we have allocated resources, Honorable Speaker, there has been serious delay in implementation, where the money is in the budget, but a year goes to the end without any money being released to the concerned counties. And Honorable Speaker, the problem has always been, if you look at the first 14 counties which were recommended, Honorable Speaker, there were only 14 out of the 47. But during the second review, we increased the counties to over 20, Honorable Speaker. And then at the same time, we created a board which is supposed to oversee the implementation. And what has happened because of that, Honorable Speaker, we have made implementation almost impossible. At the same time, we have also suffered a problem where, Honorable Speaker, some counties, because there are only pockets where we have marginalization, Honorable Speaker, they get such a low figures in terms of budgeting. And the question is, if you get such a low budgets, is it worthy really? You make the implementation so expensive because the figures are so low. So this is another area, Honorable Speaker, which should be streamlined. And I really want to appreciate the move of this bill, Honorable Speaker, because by really sorting out some of these issues, we'll be helping the country. Honorable Speaker, really, just to remind the House, the reason why this fund was created was to take care of marginalization, where some areas of this country were assessed to be marginalized. And on the basis of that, the fund was created just to help them catch up with the rest of the country, more so in the area of electrification, rural electrification, area of rural roads, area of health, Honorable Speaker. And in a situation where we have done about 13 years or 10 years, Honorable Speaker, and we have not implemented, Honorable Speaker, it is obvious then that, Honorable Speaker, these areas continue remaining marginalized. So I want to urge my colleagues to do what it takes, Honorable Speaker, to get this bill through so that we can streamline the operations of the equalization fund, and by doing so, then we will be helping the marginalized area. Otherwise, Honorable Speaker, there could be need as we move to the future. I don't know what the implication will be, but the 20 years which was allocated, Honorable Speaker, now we've spent about 13 within an implementation. I don't know whether as a House we have some room, Honorable Speaker, to extend the timelines. Because unless we extend the timelines, Honorable Speaker, it is obvious that the expected outcomes out of this equalization fund will never be realized. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support, and thank you so much for the time, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Ado.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to contribute to this motion on a very important matter, which is the administration of the Equalization Fund. Mr. Speaker, since its inception, the Equalization Fund, which was a very noble idea, has been really watered down to the effect that the definition of marginalized areas has changed from what it was initially designed to be. Those 13 counties that had initially been targeted for because they had been left behind in terms of development, and increasing them to more than 30. A need to refine the definition of marginalized areas. People do not have needs such water and other.
Us to read a contribution. You are supposed to be debating. You are reading a written text on your phone, and that's against standing orders. You are not, you are reading. I can see.
Thank you.
Yes. George Gitonga Murugara.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this Senate bill, which seeks to establish procedures for administration of the Equalization Fund in Kenya. Equalization Fund is a constitutional provision whereby the rationale is to ensure that all parts of the country are developed equally, or to some extent they come to some parity when it comes to matters development. We know very well that in this country there are areas that are more developed than others, and especially those we know as marginalized areas, which have actually been left behind, not just from the time of independence, but even during the colonial period. It is because of this that it became necessary in our constitution to make a provision for the equalization of these areas through a fund. And this is the fund which this Senate bill seeks to have administered in a structured manner. I come from a marginalized area in Tharaka Nithi County. My constituency, Tharaka, is highly marginalized, and I've always looked forward to benefiting from the Equalization Fund. But because of the way it is administered, which is not clear, and especially when it comes to who benefits, we have actually seen some counties getting the lion's share of these funds, while other counties, through sublocations, get minimal provisions, and this cannot be termed as equalization. It is therefore important that we come up with a structure on how the fund is going to be administered, who is going to give advice on how the funds are to be distributed, and how those funds would be used across the country. Therefore, this is an important bill which I believe the Finance Committee has looked at, and if there are necessities to actually make amendments, we will be doing that. The bill starts with the establishment, after preliminaries, the establishment of an advisory board. I believe this is the board which will be advising on which areas are marginalized and which areas should be getting the fund. Then after that, we move to what happens in the counties, because this is where the execution of the funds is supposed to take place. And it is proposed that there will be county technical committees whose main function will include which areas are marginalized in terms of water and sanitation, roads, health facilities, electricity, and such other areas. And this is important because when it comes to an area like Tharaka constituency, all these parameters are applicable. We actually need equalization in terms of water and sanitation. Our roads are not particularly well done. Health facilities are in deplorable state, while electricity connectivity is at minimum, slightly less than 25%. Therefore, we need a law like this one. And I'll be advocating that as soon as the advisory board and the other mechanism is put in place, we actually look at these marginalized constituencies, including Tharaka, and after that, we can see whether we will come to par with the rest of the country. There is a provision on winding up of the fund, which is again constitutional, and this is after it has achieved what it has been established to achieve. I doubt whether this is going to happen in the near future, but we look forward to having the fund doing much more than what we have seen it do today. Because, sincerely speaking, there are areas in this country, there are counties that are miles ahead of others, and unless we come up with a very equitable way of equalizing ourselves, then some areas will remain more developed, while other areas like Tharaka will remain marginalized. So with those remarks, I beg to support this bill so that we see whether we can have it better than it is when it comes to application of the equalization fund in the country. I beg to support, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, you are done. Come, Kate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to support.
Honorable Ngeno, can you disband that Kamukunji?
To support this bill, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker.
You are disturbing my deputy by continuously giggling behind her.
Mr. Speaker, I had a similar bill before this House in the last term. And Mr. Speaker, let me begin by saying, Mr. Speaker, that this is an enabling piece of legislation because this law is meant to operationalize Article 204 of the Constitution on the administration of the Equalization Fund. Mr. Speaker, currently there are regulations administering this fund that were developed by the National Treasury. And as the saying goes, Mr. Speaker, the proof of the pudding or the sweetness of the pudding is in the eating. Currently, Mr. Speaker, using the current regulations made by the Treasury and given current experiences, Mr. Speaker, the Equalization Fund is one most abused fund in this republic. And Mr. Speaker, one of the ways this fund has been abused is through double allocation by the county governments. Double allocation and overlapping of projects and programs, Mr. Speaker. You will find, Mr. Speaker, that the county government has done a road somewhere. and they will allocate a similar amount of money on the same road. So I'll be proposing, Mr. Speaker, at the third reading, Mr. Speaker, I'll be proposing that the administration of this fund should be moved completely from the counties. This fund, because I've looked at this bill, that provision is not there. This bill seems to over-glorify the role of the county governments. Yet the county governments are the culprits of the current abuse of this fund. So, Mr. Speaker, I'll be proposing, Mr. Speaker, that this fund shall be or should be administered independently from the county governments in order for the marginalized areas to be able to realize the kind of development contemplated by the Constitution and Article 204. One of the major issues happening currently, Mr. Speaker, is the placement of the procurement entity. That the county governments are the procuring entities to this fund. And I see in this bill, Mr. Speaker, there is a continuation of that element of the county governments acting as the procuring entities, the authorized body to procure. Therein lies the problem, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, in as much as the counties are devolved units, we must understand that there is something called intra-county marginalization. And that is real, Mr. Speaker. Intra-county marginalization is real. So it cannot be, therefore, it's a question of double jeopardy. For those of us who come from, who are marginalized in Nairobi, and then you go and get marginalized at the county level. It's a question of double tragedy for those of us who find ourselves in those situations. Mr. Speaker, there is the matter of savings. Whenever projects are done, Mr. Speaker, there are savings from projects. And as we speak, Mr. Speaker, the savings from equalization fund, those monies have been abused left, right, using the current regulations. The savings that are made from those funds, Mr. Speaker, are being diverted to other ministries and other activities that are not even present in the marginalized areas, Mr. Speaker. So, and that is why I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, that this fund, the management of this fund must be removed completely from the county governments. In any case, Mr. Speaker, Article 204 of the Constitution is very clear, Mr. Speaker, if I may quote, Mr. Speaker. Article 204(2). Article 204(2) says, Mr. Speaker, that the national government shall use the equalization fund only to provide basic services, including water, roads, health facilities, and electricity to marginalized areas. The Constitution does not speak about marginalized counties. It speaks about marginalized areas, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Article 204(2)(b) states that the national government may use the equalization fund, B, either directly or indirectly through conditional grants to counties. So there is the option, Mr. Speaker. Option A is to use this fund directly. But this bill, Mr. Speaker, seems to have ceded the utilization of this fund to county governments. And that is where the abuse begins. The double allocation of funds begins. So I'll be proposing, Mr. Speaker, to amend this bill to ensure that we minimize the role of the county governments in the utilization of this fund. Mr. Speaker, I want to disagree with my colleagues who have, to differ with my colleagues, who have spoken about the expansion of the space of this fund. The first deprivation policy by the Commission on Revenue Allocation identified counties erroneously as centers of deprivation. But the second policy, Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate the second policy that was done by the Commission on Revenue Allocation, because they went up to the sub-location level. In the first policy, Mr. Speaker, most deserving areas and most deserving marginalized areas like Tiati were left out. But in the second policy, which went now up to the sub-location level, that is where the most deserving areas like Tiati constituency has been able to benefit from this fund. And suffice it to say, Mr. Speaker, that marginalization is not a good thing. I see some people here some colleagues trying to make marginalization a birthright. Marginalization is not a birthright. It's a bad situation that you find yourself in because of the policies of the past administrations. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, as I support this bill, Mr. Speaker, I want to state that let us all embrace the second policy that went up to the sub-location level to ensure that every part of the country is touched in order to correct the low levels of development. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, allow me before we continue to recognize the presence of Kilifi UDA, that's the United Democratic Alliance delegation from Kilifi North Constituency, Kilifi County. They are seated in the public gallery. I think I will ask Honorable Owen Baya to welcome them on behalf of the National Assembly. Majority Leader, you want to assist?
Yes, Honorable Speaker, thank you very much. On behalf of the member for Kilifi and the Deputy Majority Leader, Honorable Owen Baya, who has just stepped up because he had to go prepare for the funeral of Governor or Speaker Kingi's father's funeral in Kilifi. Let me take this opportunity to welcome the UDA team from Kilifi. Welcome them to the National Assembly. This is where the Deputy Majority Leader and member for Kilifi North usually sits, right next to me where Honorable Chikati is seated. And he has asked me on his behalf and on behalf of the National Assembly to welcome that UDA team from Kilifi. UDA is indeed the party of the future, the present and the future. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Majority Leader. And now we'll call upon the Honorable Member for Mandera North, Honorable Bashir Abdullahi, to contribute. Give him the mic.
You are not meant.
I think didn't give him. You gave him the mic behind him. Okay, move to another mic. Your mic has a problem. Go to the one to your left. The one to your left. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Is that working? It goes out. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity, and I want to contribute to the bill that is on the floor of the House. Honorable Speaker, from the onset, as you know, Equalization Fund is within the Constitution under Article 2 or 4. And the framers of this Constitution from the beginning had in mind that counties within the country shall all be equal. And that's why they came up with the Equalization Fund. The initial concept was that it was supposed to cover 14 counties. But as we speak right now, it's now covering 34 counties. The unfortunate part is that the amount allocated to the same fund has not increased. The percentage still remains the same, despite the fact that it was initially 14, but now it is 34. Simply because other pockets of marginalization have been added, covering 34 counties. Honorable Speaker, and this bill comes in handy because it is coming to cure some of the challenges that the Equalization Fund has. One key aspect which I want to support is the issue of the sunset clause. The Equalization Fund has a sunset clause of 20 years. We are now left with 6 years. Now with 6 years, and the fund has not been appropriated as emphasized in the Constitution. 6 years will come to an end, and those monies will still not have been appropriated or utilized. So I think the sunset clause needs to be increased to another 10 or 20 more years so that it can effectively cover all the marginal areas as emphasized. Also, Speaker, same Article 2 or 4 also talks about how this fund is supposed to be administered. It talks about directly or indirectly. And this comes in terms of regulations. Now, directly or indirectly, I will also actually propose, and probably this will come when we go to the Committee of the Whole House, is that let 50% be done indirectly and 50% done directly. That way, it can take care of concerns of all sectors. Because we have an advisory board, which in essence does not really administer the fund. What they do is that they will wait reports, areas to be covered, and so forth from the counties. But if we have 50% directly and in 50% indirectly, then the board will have a work to do to ensure that the other 50% which is direct are properly administered. Honorable Speaker, the regulations that are currently in force 100% favors administration in terms of counties. The worst part is that some of these funds are utilized for projects or minute projects to the tune of 4 million, 5 million, 3 million, 2.5 million. It really loses the essence of this kind of fund. The first time when this thing was programmed or appropriated is when funds to the tune of 50 million, 100 million to the constituencies or counties was done. But the recent allocations of programs, shockingly, is 2.5, 3.5. How will that be impactful to the people of the marginalized areas? And all that is because of the current regulations which are in force. And this House has the powers and the privilege to change those regulations. So the equalization bill as it is quite okay, quite in order. All we need to do is to ensure that the regulations are amended to suit the realities on the ground. Honorable Speaker, in terms of the counties, I understand, and 14 counties initially, almost 60% of the fund still covers the 14%. And of course, with the addition of the additional counties, that has brought up to 34. But what we're talking about is, has this money also been utilized? Every financial year, this House appropriates funds, but it's not utilized. We have arrears to the tune of almost 13 billion lying at Treasury without being utilized. And yet, the sunset clause is just almost the corner, 6 years from now. And yet we have 13 billion arrears. Will the objectives be achieved of this fund? It will not be achieved.
So I think we'll be making several amendments, of course, when it comes to the Committee of All House, but by and large, I support the bill, especially ensuring that the sunset clause for the Constitution Fund is extended by 10 or 20 years. And we look also fairly on the issue of administration of the fund. Is it the board that administers 100%, or it is the counties that administers? As it is now, it is the counties that administer 100%. Unfortunately, as I said before, they only use it for minute projects, 3 million, 4 million, which is not really something that we are proud of. We want, in the next administration of this board, of this fund, that projects not less than 50 million to be done in each of the constituencies, so that it is impactful. People can see it and realize that equalization is something that is helpful. Otherwise, I support. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Elders, Honorable Adan Kainan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, allow me to delve a bit into the history of this particular article. Madam Speaker, during the countdown to the current constitution, there were 3 contending groups. One group led by Mr. Kibaki and cohort wanted a pure presidential system. Another group led by the Honorable Raila Odinga wanted a pure parliamentary system. And in between, during the discourse, there emerged another group who said, in the midst of all this, what is there for the disadvantaged group? And that brought in the issue of devolution and the inclusion of this particular clause to address all the historical marginalization pursuant to the wrong implementation of the old constitution, and also sessional paper number 10 of 1965, and you know the provisions. Madam Speaker, shockingly, even after the promulgation of the current constitution, again because of red tape, because of the bureaucratic nature of the system, the operationalization and the role of this particular article have not been conceptualized well, are not being implemented well, and the systems, and you understand, created some sort of jurisdictional conflict between the members of parliament and the governors. So the period, the 20 years period is coming to an end, and yet there is nothing to demonstrate. There is nothing to demonstrate on the ground. I represent one of the constituencies that ought to have benefited from this. There is nothing to demonstrate on the ground that this particular article or this particular funding has benefited those people that was tailor-made to benefit. Then what is the meaning of this? The meaning of this is we as members, and I really want to believe with you, the governors want to usurp the mandate of the National Assembly. We as the members of the National Assembly have failed to think out of the box, and we have fallen into their trap. This trap only suits the bureaucrats and the treasury mandarins. We have lost it. It's not 13 billion. It's over 70 billion that is floating between treasury, the National Assembly, and the counties. The sunset period, the time is coming to an end. What is our take? It is the high time that we put aside all our differences and apply the letter and the spirit of what this particular clause article was intended for, and resist and budget for all the outstanding monies, send the money direct to CDF and the constituencies. And this bill should address and facilitate so that members of parliament have a role to play. Madam Speaker, as it is, this is meant right now that I followed what happened to the budget of this in the last financial year. And what happened, I'm told, other than what Honorable Bashir has alluded to, of having small projects here and there, 2 million, 3 million, that have no impact. I'm told the remaining junk part of the budgetary allocation have been sucked into the county money, county allocations. This will not help us. Through the PPG, through the other groups. Right now, I'm not worried. Even the 34 counties can benefit. The original 13 can benefit. But this program is not working. We cannot be lamenting as the leadership. Through this bill, we must cure the pitfalls. We must address the challenges so that the next 6 years remaining from these people, this program can be turned into a productive 6 years. Colleagues, for those of you who have joined this house, This program was supposed to be a life changer. This program is not working. And it was picked, Madam Speaker, you remember at the end of the Second World War, the victors and the vanquished came together and come up with something called the Marshall Plan. Marshall Plan gave birth to something called USAID. USAID is right now what has been, you have heard what is happening, unfortunately. In our context, for those of us who live under this sovereign republic called Kenya, this is our Marshall Plan. Why is it not working? The Marshall Plan of the US worked. Why is this one not working? How comes we are not getting our rightful share? How comes every step that we take must attract a court battle? It is because we are not thinking out of the box. So I want to thank the mover of this bill. It is timely, but I think there is need to look at it critically so that we address all the gaps, so that once this is passed, any will-be litigant will not go to court and declare it unconstitutional. Because these days, litigants have become, I think, the fourth or the fifth arm of government. Anything that we do, someone must go to court. And I think a time will come, even the court will reason and say, this does not fall into their jurisdiction. So, Madam Speaker, this is the third time I'm seeing this. It is not working. Dear colleagues, this is not working. Don't worry about the 34 clocks. It is not working. It is not anywhere. The money is not being felt. The money is not going to the ground. The money has become part of the devolved functions. Can't we put our difference aside, reclaim our role, direct this money where it's supposed to be, and have maybe one project per constituency? One project per constituency. If Elders was supposed to get 200 million, 200 million can have one critical infrastructure like hospital, like a dam, like a water facility, like an educational institution. But when you have 2 million for, what is it called, water tracking, 3 million for grading, another 2 million for something, there's no impact. The right way to approach this, and I want to ask the mover, please, during the second reading, let's go back, look at it critically, consult as many legal minds as possible so that we seal all the loopholes. Recently, we were invited to a meeting, Madam Speaker. Interestingly, that meeting was supposed to have been presided over by His Excellency the President. But fortunately, he didn't come because had he come, we'll have raised so many questions. In the KICC, out of the plus 109 MPs who are supposed to attend, who are 4. That tells you the level of disinterest. We need to deal with this. The resources are there, yet we are complaining about lack of resources. Can we utilize this that we have so that in the next 6 years, these regions that have been neglected, these regions that have been stereotyped, these regions that have been completely left out in the national development agenda. Madam Speaker, this morning, I participated in a program that was being launched by His Excellency called, it's called Solar Mini Grids. Madam Speaker, I just said, I am today the father of parliament. One time I joined this parliament as one of the young legislators. There are 2 things that I was looking forward to. One of them was to see at least a black substance called black substance in the definition of those school-going children in northern Kenya called found in down Kenya. That black substance is tarmac. It has now gone to our region, courtesy of devolution. The other bit that I was saying during my lifetime as an MP, I will see, is the extension of the national grid from Nairobi and other parts that have been disadvantaged and take it to northern Kenya. It's still stuck at Garissa. We're still struggling. So one of the things that the government has done through another way, through the Ministry of Energy, is affirmative action. It is working. Why is this one not working? Why is this one convoluted? Why is this one in the wrong ecosystem? Why is this one nobody appreciate that it was meant to address? In fact, Madam Speaker, and I know you are a seasoned lawyer, if you go back to the notes of the framers of the current constitution, those are, some of them were great minds. I don't agree with a number of sections of the current constitution. But some of the critical parts, reformist part, if you go back to their notes, what they had in mind was to have a society where everybody, a Kenyan society, where everybody gets a share of the national cake. Madam Speaker, before recently, I considered myself as a second-class citizen. I considered myself as an MP representing second-class citizen within the confines of our boundary. But today, courtesy of the current constitution, courtesy of the actions of the current government, that tag is gone. Our role must be seamless. Our role must be in tandem with the national government policy. Our role should be out of lamentations. And the chairman and patron of the PPG and I know majority of our members come under this organization. Can we own this bill in addition to the mover and ensure that it addresses all the issues so that once and for all, we don't blame anybody else, but we'll blame ourselves. I want to thank the mover for this timely bill and promise you that all of us will be part and parcel of the next stages of this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Russo.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Just one moment. For those who want to participate in this bill, please press the intervention button. Currently, I only have the member for Lamu East who's on it here. Press the intervention.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also add my word to what honorable colleagues who have preceded me have talked about. Article 204 of our Constitution is a very important article. Equalization in Oxford English Dictionary means to make two things equal. And the framers of our Constitution had a very clear intent that since 1965, Sessional Paper number 10, it was intended that some parts of Kenya which were more productive should grow faster, and the rest were expected to catch up. Madam Speaker, as a distinguished lawyer, many times you sitting in front there, at times I see you having an interjection on an issue, and when you sit back and listen, I actually tend to agree with you that on the surface there are things which appear good, but if you do an incision, then you find that, oh, it is not as good as it looks from the outside. Madam Speaker, this particular bill addresses only two issues of what Equalization Fund is all about. It is about the management of the fund and also to extend the sunset clause. This house is a budget-making house. And every year, we actually pass the bill that allocates resources both to the national government and to the county government. And within that allocation, in the section of the national government, you have a line that reads Equalization Fund. I think when we try to cut this particular bill with a scissor, I think it may not be good enough for us to say, let us cut this into pieces to actually get the answer to the jigsaw. And the answer lies in what the President did this morning, what Honorable Kainan alluded to. The President commissioned signing of contracts for solar mini-grids that is going to cover 72% of Kenya. 131 projects which will cost the Kenyan taxpayer 13 billion shillings. That is a lot of resources allocated on one go, but had Equalization Fund been addressed and used as opposed to being penny-pocketed or in piecemeal, then today we are going to have flagship projects in Turkana, in Marsabit, in Isiolo, in Mandera, in Wajir, in Lamu, and other places. Madam Speaker, my concern is that since independence, 60 years plus, today this government is constructing a road a tarmac road or a highway, if you may say, between Isiolo and Mandera, a distance of 800 kilometers, where that population, almost close to 2 million people, live in that region, but until now, no one has seen it fit that a road was necessary, because it was put aside in 1965 that it was not the most productive parts of Kenya, because they never produced tea, coffee, pyrethrum, sugar. So today, somebody in the name of William Samoei Ruto is saying, if we open up that part of the country, we are going to get solar energy, wind. We are going to prospect for minerals. It is the frontier of development in Kenya. And that is where ASA lies, and somebody is beginning to identify. Madam Speaker, national government and county government in Schedule 4, their task or roles is clearly defined. Equalization Fund is a fund drawn from the consolidated fund. It does not belong to what is allocated to the counties. So, what Honorable Kainan there said, if the national government want to achieve impactful projects through this fund, they can direct it to have a hospital in Moyale, a power station in Mandera, so that this money is not just pilfered away in terms of 3 million, 5 million, which at the end of the day is a pinch of salt. Finally, Honorable Speaker, initially, this fund was intended to address inequality or marginalization in 15 counties of the ASAL. Today, they said that let it address pockets of marginalization. So the pocket will be in Kiambu, it will be in Nairobi, it will be in Muranga, it will be in Uasin-Gishu, where you come from, Honorable Speaker. So it misses the thread of why did we have this fund in the first place. So for that reason, Madam Speaker, I support this bill, but we as the pastoralist parliamentary group, we will make our voices and positions known during the third reading. And finally, it's on the dissolution of regional development authorities. The government, in its own wisdom, saw that the RDS, 6 of them, Kerio Valley Development Authority, Wasonyiro North Development Authority, Wasonyiro South Development Authority, Lake Basin Development Authority, Coast Development Authority, were actually dissolved through discussion within the cabinet. But for those of us from the pastoralist or the ASAL, we see that the RDS were doing things which the counties were not doing or are not doing. So even if we say, let us do away with RDS, that money will revert back to the consolidated fund as opposed to it going to the counties. So for that reason, Honorable Speaker, we will indulge all our colleagues in this House that let us be magnanimous. Let us think outside the box. That for us to have one nation, one people, there must be some form of equity so that we move along as a people and as a country. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Lamu East, Honorable Rueda Obo.
Asante Bispika kwa kunipatia nafasi nami nichangie. Bispika, kwa hakika hii sheria hii ya mfuko wa ugawanishaji ugawanishi ni kwamba yale maeneo bunge ambayo yalikuwa yako chini nayo yainuliwe yawe sawa na mengine. Lakini sheria hii itasaidia sana hivi inavyopangiwa. Wakati wa nyuma imekuwa na pesa lakini haikuwa na sheria, pesa imefujwa. Lakini hii sheria itatusaidia inshallah na mambo yafunguke, area zetu ziwe kama area maeneo bunge mengine. Usimamizi wa hii pesa ni muhimu. Maana kuna mifano tunaweza toa. Wakati pesa ilivyotoka mara ya kwanza, eneo bunge langu ilipata pesa hii kwa barabara inaitwa Mtangawanda Kizingitini. Wakaeka ile barabara ya kokoto ya Maram. Walitumia milioni 120. Na kulikuwa na kampuni inaitwa Zarara imekuja kutafuta gas pale, nao pia walitengeza hiyo barabara. Barabara hiyo ni kama ilitengezwa nusu na Zarara na nusu na Equalization Fund. Lakini hiyo pesa ukweli wa mambo ilifujwa. Lakini kitu ya kusikitisha ni kwa vile ni Maram, barabara ya Maram haikuweza kufuatiliwa kwa sababu atasema kulinyesha mvua, kulifanyika hivi, pesa ikatumika. Mimi pia ningetoa suggestion kwamba hii pesa isitumike kwa maana barabara za udongo au za matope. Ikifanywa ifanye hata kama ni kilomita 1 barabara ya lami. Ndio hii pesa isitumike kwa njia ambayo mtu anaweza jificha nayo akaimaliza. Hii pesa ni pesa ya maskini. Na watu wanasahau hii pesa ya maskini ikiliwa inamrudia mtu. Manake kama hiyo pesa iliyotumika kwetu ingekuwa imetumika vizuri sahihi tungekuwa tuko mbele, na sasa tunatumia hii nyingine kusonga mbele zaidi. Kwa mfano watu wa Mangai waliwekewa pesa, wako Boni Forest waliwekewa milioni 45 ya maji, ambao huo mradi ingekuwa umeinua hiyo area. Paka sasa kutoka uhuru upatikane hiyo area hakuna hata mradi mmoja wa serikali. Mradi mkubwa sahihi ni huu mimi nimeanzisha sasa ya kujenga shule na nikisaidiwa na KDF. Lakini ile pesa ilifujwa, ukizitafuta paka sasa hizo milioni 45 hujui ziko wapi, hujui zilifanywa nini. Hazikufanyiwa. Paka sasa hizo pesa hazijulikani ziko wapi. Lakini kwa hii sheria itatusaidia. Na tukizungumzia mambo ya hii pesa, kila mtu anafikiria ule ubinafsi kutaka kwao ifanyiwe hiyo pesa. Lakini ukweli ni kwamba wale wanaishi kule kwingine ni wenzenu, ni ndugu zenu. Kama vile pia pesa inavyowekwa kwa chai au kwa kahawa, ikiwekwa kwa huku kwingine msikasirike. Kwa sababu sisi hatukasiriki, kwa sababu sisi hatuna chai, hatuwezi lilia hiyo pesa ya chai. Ikiletwa hii pesa ya marginalization, kwa sababu hii pesa ni kurekebisha makosa yalotokea kutoka serikali zote zilizopita. Kwa sababu haya ambayo tuko nayo sasa ni makosa ya serikali zilizopita yalifanyika. Kwa hivyo ni kurekebisha, sio ni favor kwamba tufanyiwa, inarekebishwa. Mimi namshukuru rais huyu, hii pesa iliyowekwa, yani ukiangalia kutoka aingie miaka 2 amefanya zaidi ya hii pesa iliyowekwa. Hii pesa ukihesabu impact yake hakuna kama hivi yeye alivyofanya. Mimi kwangu rais naweza kutoa example vile mfano vile amefanya. Hiyo barabara ambayo ilikuliwa pesa nyingi za Equalization Fund, sahihi yeye ananekia lami kilomita 15. Mbona hakusema atafanya yote kilomita 35? Amesema acha nifanye kitu ya kuonekana. Hao watoto walozaliwa Lamu Mashariki ambao wakutoka wazaliwe paka sasa, pengine mtu ana miaka 40 ama miaka 60 hajawahi ona barabara, acha naye aone barabara. Ni tofauti, nataka wabunge wenzangu waelewe kwamba ni tofauti maeneo yetu na maeneo yenu. Hata pale Pwani maeneo bunge mengine ni tofauti na maeneo bunge yetu. Kwa mfano ukisema mtu wa Voi kutoka wazaliwe, mtoto akizaliwa tu anaona reli, anaona barabara. Hafanyi kama ni trip paka aende kuona barabara. Mtoto wetu wa Lamu Mashariki akisoma skuli labda paka wafanye trip ndio waende wakaone barabara ya lami ni nini. Kwa hivyo rais huyu ndio ametambua kwamba kuna marginalization na anafanya kazi. Na Speaker, kule maeneo bunge yetu watu wetu wanataka ile hope. Ilikuwa roho zimekufa, hawana hope na Kenya. Lakini saa hii rais ameweka hope, watoto wetu wamekuwa na hope, barabara inakuja. Leo tumekwenda kusign kitu ya historia kutoka dunia iumbwe. Kuna vijiji vyangu kule ni 23. Vijiji 12 ndio ziko na stima. Saa hii tumekwenda kusign vijiji 3, Ndau, Kiwaiu na Mkokoni, zinaekwa off grid, mini grid za solar. Yani ni kitu paka unafanya unakuwa very emotional, unakuwa karibu nilie mimi kwa hiyo function. Watu wangu kwa miaka yote hiyo hajaona stima, mtoto sahihi ndio tunaweka stima, imagine. Na sisi ilikuwa tuwafanya CBC inafanyika vipi kule, hata shule hazina stima. So sisi tukizungumzia, watu wengine wanaona tunapenda tu kucomplain au kulalamika. Lakini kulikuwa na kamati ya bunge hapa ilienda kule. Haki ya Mungu, wale watu wa kamati wananiambia, Rweda, kweli sisi ilikuwa tunaona maeneo bunge yetu ni yako nyuma, lakini kweli kuna maeneo bunge yana shida. Kwangu ukienda, Speaker, utaenda na ndege, uende na boti, uende na gari, uende na pikipiki. Na saa nyingine hata kama uko na security, kuna kwingine unaenda unasema haiwezekani kwenda, unaambiwa na security. Tulienda na kamati 2 wakakatazwa kufika Mangai. Barabara mbovu, insecurity, kila kitu. Kwa hivyo nawaomba ndugu zangu, hii sheria tuipitishe, na ipitishwe na marekebisho iweze kusaidia maeneo yetu. Na ikisaidia maeneo yetu, pia imesaidia maeneo yenu. Kwa sababu kama sahihi ukienda kule Kiangwi, kuna police station kule, kuna hospitali. Police station ni kambi. Ukienda kuna watoto wenu, ndugu zenu ambao wafanya kazi pale. Wale wanapata shida, haimaanishi ni Mbajuni peke yake ndio atapata shida. Polisi wakipelekwa sehemu zingine kama Kiwaiu, akienda polisi kifikisha miaka 5 anatufanya kama wazimu. Kwa sababu ya hali ngumu za maisha kule. Na ni watoto wenu wengi. Si watoto wa Kibajuni wale wanakuwa kule, au si Wabajuni peke yake, ni kabila tofauti wanaenda kuwa madaktari, wanaenda kuwa polisi. Kwa hivyo lazima yale maeneo yainuke, ndio wale wakija kufanya kazi isilete stress nyingi, waweze kufanya kazi vizuri. Speaker, na wasisitiza tena na tena, ikipelekwa ile pesa ya equalization fund, governors wana mfuko mkubwa wa kuweza kufanya. Lakini hii pesa ndogo ambayo sahihi iko, hizo milioni kama sahihi imebakishwa, huu wakati wangu kule kuna hati milioni 24. Milioni 24 yagawanywa eneo bunge lote. Sasa governor wanachukua wanaweka kwa devolved functions. Sasa inakuwa kama si national government, hakuna kitu inafanywa. Kwa hivyo ziwekwe sheria, tugawanye, ijulikane county wanafanya nini, national government wanafanya nini, isiwe na mizozo. Watu wetu wasaidike. Asante Speaker.
The honorable member for Likoni, Honorable Mishimboko.
Asante sana Speaker. Speaker, naunga mkono mswada huu ambao unazungumzia, haswa tukiangalia katiba yetu kifungu 24 ibara ya 2 imezungumzia ya kwamba fedha hizi zitaweza kusaidia katika mambo ya kimsingi, mambo ya maji, mambo ya barabara, mambo ya afya na mambo ya umeme. Na imezungumzia haswa huduma hizi zitaweza kufikishwa katika sehemu ambazo zilikuwa zimesaulika, sehemu ambazo zimekuwa nyuma katika maendeleo, haswa kwa misingi ya mambo ya maji, barabara, afya. Na tukiangalia haswa Speaker, tunaona zile sehemu 14 ama kaunti 14 ambazo zitafaidika ama zimefaidika na pesa hizi ama hazina hii ni kama sehemu ya Turkana. Jamani, tukiangalia leo Turkana, tuangalieni zile shida zilioko Turkana katika mambo ya muundo msingi ya barabara, mambo ya maji na mambo ya miundo msingi ya afya na hata mambo ya ukame. Jamani, ni masikitiko makubwa sana. Ukiangalia sehemu ya Lamu ni masikitiko makubwa, sehemu ya Mandera, sehemu ya Wajia, sehemu hata ya Kwale, sehemu za Kwale nyingine, sehemu za Kilifi nyingine, sehemu za Marsabit. Sisi kama Wakenya tunakubali ya kwamba kulikuwa na dhulma za kihistoria, kulikuwa na kutengwa kwa kihistoria na ni kwa sababu serikali ilikuwa ni moja, serikali kuu peke yake, ambapo kila kitu kilikuwa kinapangwa kule juu, kinamalizika kule juu, na sehemu nyingi ilikuwa inasaulika. Tushukuru sana hivi sasa kuna ugatuzi, tunaweza kuona maendeleo mengine yakipitia mambo ya ugatuzi. Nataka kuunga mkono kwa sababu mswada huu pia umetaka kuongeza, yani maisha ya fedha hizi ilikuwa ifike mpaka mwaka 2030, lakini sasa inaomba iongezwe miaka 10 mengine zaidi. Na hii ni kwa sababu bado tunaona zile sehemu ambazo zilitengwa ama zilidhulumika bado hawajafikia ile shabaha katika mambo ya maji, mambo ya barabara, mambo ya umeme na hata mambo ya kielimu. Hazijafika sehemu kama hizo. Kwa hivyo kuongozwa kwa uno muda, na mimi ningependa kusema hata miaka 10 ni michache. Tuweke kama miaka 20. Miaka 20 itakuwa miaka mizuri sana kuhakikisha hivi sasa, kwa sababu Daktari William Samoei Ruto yuko imara kuhakikisha ya kwamba hizi fedha zitatumika kwa njia inayofaa na zitaweza kubadilisha maisha ya Mkenya, haswa yule ambaye ametengwa kwa miaka mingi sana. Mheshimiwa Speaker, pia lazima tuwe na muundo msingi na taratibu za mwafaka za kuonyesha ya kwamba kutakuwa na usawa, kutakuwa na uwazi, kuweza kusambaza fedha hizi katika zile sehemu zilizotajwa. Kusiwe ya kwamba sehemu nyingine wanapata zaidi na nyingine wanapata chache. Na pia wananchi wenyewe waweze kuhusishwa vilivyo ili waweze kusema zile shida ambazo zinawakwaza sana katika ile mipango ya maji, mipango ya barabara, mipango ya afya, mipango ya umeme. Kwa mfano, unaweza fika sehemu mseme mnajenga visima na kumbe visima havitatosha. Pengine sehemu ile wanataka kuwa na mabawa ili hata yale mabawa mbali na kutumia maji nyumbani waweze kutumia katika mambo ya kilimo. Kwa hivyo pesa hizi ni pesa ambazo ikiwa tutaziangazia kwa njia inayofaa na tutoe ufisadi. Ndugu yangu dadangu Rueda amezungumzia ya kwamba barabara ya Mtangawanda ilitengezwa kwa pesa nyingi na kulikuwa na wafadhili wengine na inaonekana ni kama pesa nyingine ilipotea. Na mimi niweze kumshukuru sana rais. Hata juzi Mheshimiwa Rueda basi ya kwanza imeweza kubebwa na boti na ikafika kule Amu. Unajua kwa Kiswahili tunaita Amu. Na hiyo yote naona ni mipango ya Daktari William Samoei Ruto. Kwa hivyo tunampatia kongole kwa jambo hilo. Na tunataka kuweka Wakenya wawe sawa, wawe sawia, haswa katika mambo ya kimsingi, yale mambo ambayo yanatukwaza sana. Mambo ya maji ukiangalia hata kule Kwale na Kilifi kuna sehemu mpaka sasa kina mama wanachoka vichwa, wanachoka migongo, wanatembea makilomita mingi sana kutafuta maji. Na hatutaki kuona Kenya kwengine kuna maji kila mahali, hata inapotea tu, inatumika tu bure bure, na sehemu nyingine hakuna maji. Sehemu nyingine kuna barabara zinaanikiwa mahindi, sehemu nyingine watu hawajawahi kuona hata lami, hawajui lami ni nini. Kuna jamii kama ya Wadorobo, jamii ya Waongek, zile sehemu walizo mambo mengi ya kimuundo misingi katika maisha hawajawahi kuona. Na Speaker, tungependa pia tuweke amendment tuseme ya kwamba hata sehemu za kielimu, mambo ya kielimu yaweze kuangaliwa na fedha hizi, kwa sababu leo kuna sehemu hawana shule ile tunaita kwa Kiingereza national school. Hawana hata ile kwa Kiingereza tunaita provisional school. Yani wako na shule tu zile ambazo ziko katika kiwango cha wilaya peke yake, na hawana zile ambazo ziko katika hali ya shule zile nzuri, kama kusema ya kwamba tukisema kama shule nzuri kama Starehe Boys kwa mfano. Lakini kuna sehemu hawana shule kama hizo ambazo hata zinaweza kutoa watoto na natija juu sana ya kielimu. Kwa hivyo mambo ya pesa hii lazima tuiangalie, na tuangalie zile nyanja nyingine ambazo hazijawekwa katika katiba kuangaliwa na fedha hii. Mambo hata ya chakula. Tumekuwa na ukame sana katika taifa letu. Sehemu za Tana River, sehemu za kule Marsabit na sehemu za kame nyingi sana katika sehemu yetu ya Kenya. Wamekuwa wakikosa chakula, wamekuwa na shida, kina mama na watoto wanahangaika, mifugo pia inakufa kwa sababu ya maji, kwa sababu ya chakula na kwa sababu ya miundo misingi kwa mambo ya kijamii sana. Kwa hivyo mimi nataka niseme, tumejua kuna ile board, lazima ile bodi pia iangaliwe na ipigwe msasa, na iwe ni bodi ambayo itakuwa inafanya usawa, na haswa iweke vigezo na mikakati ya kuwa fedha hizi zitatumika kivipi. Hii sitofahamu ya serikali kuu na serikali ya kaunti pia lazima imalizike, kwa sababu tunajua kaunti wako na fedha zao ambazo wanazipata. Lakini fedha hizi ingekuwa mwafaka kama serikali kuu ingetumia hata mfumo wa NGCDF iweze kupeleka pesa zile pale, mbunge akiwa pale anaelewa haswa matatizo nyeti katika mambo ya maji, barabara, afya na umeme. Inaelewa zaidi sana kuliko katika kaunti, kwa sababu pengine kaunti ni kubwa sana, lakini ukipitisha chini mashinani ambapo tunazungumzia ugatuzi, tunaweza kuona ya kwamba Wakenya wanaweza kubadilisha hali zao za maisha. Na mimi nataka niseme mwaka huu wa 2025 ni mwaka wa mageuzi katika mambo ya maendeleo. Na katika sehemu hii ya fedha hizi ni sehemu ambayo lazima tukifanya ile tunaita kwa Kiingereza supplementary budget, tuweze pia kuangalia hata tukiweka bajeti, pesa hii lazima iwekwe ya kutosha, kwa sababu ni kweli hatuko sawa katika sehemu zetu tunazotoka katika Jamhuri ya Taifa letu la Kenya. Na hii yote ililetwa ya kwamba kulikuwa na mambo ya ukabila wakati huo wa nyuma. Ndio unaona Mheshimiwa Rais kila saa anasema, anazungumzia Ukenya na anazungumzia kuwa tushikane kama Wakenya, tuwe Kenya moja na tuwe kitu kimoja. Ndio sababu kila Mkenya awe pale alipo anapata maji, ana muundo msingi wa barabara, kama ni mambo ya zahanati tuweze kujua. Sasa hivi kuna maradhi ya saratani yameenea sana, kina mama wengi wanakufa na saratani. Je, sehemu hizi ambazo zilitengwa, sehemu nyingi za kame, sehemu ambazo zilikuwa zimesauliwa, wana zahanati ambayo inaweza kuwa na sehemu ya kuangalia mambo ya saratani? Hilo ni swali lazima tuliulize. Kuna maradhi magumu mazito ambayo sasa hivi tuko nayo hapa katika taifa letu la Kenya, na iwapo hatutakuwa na zahanati ambazo zina vifaa, zina madaktari, zina madawa ya kutosha, basi Wakenya wengi wataweza kupoteza maisha yao. Ndiposa tukasema lazima tuweke jambo kama hili liweze kupiga darubini na kutathmini, je, katika taifa letu la Kenya, kaunti zetu 47, mabunge yetu 290, ni sehemu gani ambazo zimetengwa, ziko nyuma, hazijapata maendeleo? Kwa hivyo naunga mkono Bi Speaker, na naambia wabunge wenzangu tuangalie mikakati ya sheria na mbinu na miundo misingi ya kuonyesha fedha hizi zitamsaidia Mkenya, na Kenya itakuwa moja na Wakenya sote tutafurahia. Asante sana Bi Speaker.
Asante sana. The member for Lakdera, if you indulge me and with your permission, allow me to allow a member for Mogotio to go first. I know you are ahead of him, but I know he's been sent to some other duties by the Right Honourable Speaker relating to our late colleague. So if you allow him, and then you'll be next. Is that okay? Okay. Proceed, Honourable Kibarek.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, equalization funds is the second most important thing to happen to this country after devolution. Some part of this country had been neglected and marginalized for far too long since independence. And with the coming of devolution, it gave some ray of hope to those places which were marginalized for a long time. After devolution, equalization fund came in handy. That it enabled some areas which are very much marginalized to get resources to be able to catch up with the rest of the country. Due to urbanization and the policy of 1965, where they developed the high potential areas, those far-flung areas, which are part of this country, and actually constitute over 70% of the Kenya landmass, had been marginalized for far too long, with no water, with no electricity, with no good roads, no hospitals, and they were surviving, while the rest of the country were living large and living well, Madam Speaker. When this equalization fund came, it gave hope to Kenyans from those areas that will be remembered, and they will catch up with the rest of the country. However, Madam Speaker, just like devolution, we have to make sure that we follow it up so that it doesn't miss the point, so that we don't inherit corruption through this fund, Madam Speaker, so that we don't inherit misappropriation through this fund, because devolution has failed to attain the main goal which they intended to do because of misappropriation, mismanagement, and corruption. And now, as we speak, for the last almost 12 years or 13 years in devolution, you rarely see a project done by the devolution. And while yet, there's a lot of money which are appropriated to these counties. Equalization fund equally risk going the same line because of management and oversight. Madam Speaker, I support this bill because, and I support Senate for this, because if we don't follow up with a strong oversight and to know where this fund lies, either in county or in national, and it should be fully, for it to have a very clear oversight, we'll end up losing the achievement which this fund will have given to this nation. Madam Speaker, as it is at the moment, you cannot tell whether it is fully in county default or whether it is in national, making it very difficult to oversight because it's almost a 50-50 kind of sharing between the national and the county government, making it hard. Is it MCA to oversight? Is it member of parliament? Or is it senator? Coming with this, now with the Equalization Advisory Board, it can be now clear in following up and the records and the books and everything of this equalization, it will be able to achieve the intended purpose. And my prayer is that this equalization fund should have a very lean team, just like NGCDF, so that less than 8% of it goes to the administration. The rest 92% should go to development so that we're able to see tangible development and we're able to see fast-track development. Secondly, Madam Speaker, in terms of CRA, identifying areas to benefit from equalization, at times we get a place more marginalized, not being able to be enlisted in the areas, in the locations, and in the areas and wards to benefit from equalization, while some areas are a bit under-deserving and they are not picked by CRA. So as we work on this board, we should also work on a clear, fair formula through CRA that our colleagues in Senate should help us, so that the picking of the areas we should be beneficiary of this equalization fund should be fair and beyond reproach, not because should not be done without proper equity, because it end up not achieving the same purpose and intention which was supposed to achieve through this equalization fund. And through our colleagues in Senate and National Assembly, we have to make sure that the formula for CRA, for maybe fourth or fifth policy, should be fair, transparent, in a manner that all areas which are marginalized are enlisted in the list of the areas to benefit. As we work on this board, which will be able to run this fund and will be a clear path of oversight so that we are able to move forward. It is my prayer that all areas are covered, because in some areas, I come from Baringo, in some areas which are deserving don't benefit from this fund. Some areas which are still deserving, or an area which you know the level of marginalization is the same. One area gets, the other one doesn't get. It is something that we should work through this CRA formula and with our colleagues in Senate, so that we are able to make it fair and equitable to every part of this nation which are marginalized and which have been marginalized for far too long, especially the pastoralist part of this country, which was left behind for many years. Madam Speaker, and as I say this, allow me to pay tribute to a great man who was a great believer of this bill, a senator, a great man, amiable man, very humble man, very kind-hearted human being, a true Christian, a believer, a son of the soil, son of the great Baringo, a man, William Kipkiror Cheptumo. He believed in this bill. With him, I have discussed about this bill and the relationship between National Assembly and Senate for many times. And he was a believer that this will be a game changer to the areas that we come from, which has been marginalized for far too long. Especially as Madam Speaker, who come from Baringo. We have two kinds of marginalization. One is the marginalization by nature and by previous governments and, and whatever it happened. Two is what we call post-President Daniel Moi marginalization, where everyone tells you you come from Baringo, you don't deserve anything, you got it during Moi time. As if problems are not evolving. As if every other day it comes with new challenges. So, Madam Speaker, a great man called William Kipkiror Cheptumo, we lost a son of the soil. A good human being by excellence. A good believer of devolution, equalization, and nationhood. He believed in a project called Kenya, just like our President William Ruto. He was an advocate of social justice. He was an advocate of development. William Kipkiror Cheptumo was a good listener. He was a good advisor and a counselor to many of us young people. He was a mentor to many of us. He took us, when we were elected into this house, William Kipkiror Cheptumo took his time to advise us, being a senior. He will call us and with authority reminds us that he's an elder and he's a ranking member, and whatever he says, whatever he says, he's saying out of authority. One thing that Cheptumo will tell us, and will tell me personally, is that work for the people. Just work for the people. Don't mind about election. When you work for the people, people will re-elect you. When you don't work for the people, you will not be re-elected. So it will remind me every other time, don't even bother yourself thinking about 2027, think about development, because a total sum of what you do now will be judged when it comes to election time. He will tell us to always devote ourselves and our energy to serving our people and to serving this nation and to believe in this project called Kenya. He was a nationalist. He was never a tribalist. He was never someone who looked down upon people, given that he was a much elder person than us. He never dismissed us based on age. He was not an ageist. He was not someone who will look down upon you because he was more older than us, but he was someone who comforted us with his wisdom, with his experience. And he did a lot of development in Baringo while he was member of parliament Baringo North. He did tarmacs, he did roads, he did many other things. While he was senator, he was a unifying factor in my county for Baringo. He was a person who will sit all of us down and, chant away and bring a formula on how to make Baringo a better county and make this nation a better country. So we want to pray with the people of Baringo. We want to pray with the people, the family of William Cheptumo. Pray with the people of Baringo North from Tunoyua where he was born, and the entire Baringo North, the people of Baringo, the people of Kenya, and the senators who worked closely with Cheptumo. May God comfort them at this difficult time. They lost a great man. And we also lost a great father and a brother and a senior to us. So we want to pray with his family and also take this opportunity, because in the same breath, to also pray with the family of Malulu Njendi, Honorable Malulu Njendi, a good man, a gentleman by excellence. He will always sit here. He was also equally ready to give us wisdom, to always advise us, and he was very passionate about his bill on the salaries for the village elders, which you always push in this house. So, Madam Speaker, I want to thank you, and I want to tell you this equalization fund is the best fund to ever happen to this country. However, it should be followed up with a serious oversight, not to be misappropriated or to be corrupted by corrupt individuals who want to enrich themselves at the expense of this country. Thank you, Madam Speaker. God bless Kenya. God bless Baringo. God bless.
Honorable members, before we proceed, I'd like to recognize the presence of Elbagon DBE Secondary School from Molo constituency, Nakuru County. And I'll give an opportunity to the Honorable Member for Molo constituency, Honorable Kimani Kuria, to welcome them on our behalf. And make it brief.
Honorable Speaker, I want to thank you very much for giving this opportunity. I take this chance to welcome the great students of Elbagon Secondary School into this, to observe these proceedings, and to tell them when they go back home to work very, very hard. Elbagon Secondary School, coincidentally, is where my mom went to school. It's was also one of our best extra county schools in Nakuru County. They did very, very well, and we congratulate them, and I know that this group will even make us more proud. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Okay. The Honorable Member for Lagdera, Honorable Abdikadir Mohammed, and thank you very much for indulging your colleague.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this bill. The the Equalization Fund Administration Bill. Madam Speaker, as it is now, Equalization Fund is administered by a regulation. A regulation, by the time it was done by people who had counties in mind, because they're given very main roles to the counties. And the role they give to the counties is such important that nothing can move without them. Therefore, it's like they had counties in mind. They brought this regulation. They wanted to hand over this, the fund to the counties, and it has, in fact, and if you look at it, 14 years after our constitution, nothing is on the ground. Nothing done by Malchan Fund. After 70 billion shillings, if you go to my constituency, you will not even see a single toilet done through Malchan Fund. But the money has been utilized. So we can ask ourselves, where is this money going to? Where has it gone to? Secondly, Madam Speaker, I have a problem with the way marginalization areas is being defined by this bill. It's like marginalization areas is a moving target. Such that today you might be in marginalized area, tomorrow you are not there, because it's done based on policies. And the previous policies have moved the fund, the marginalized counties from 14 to 34 currently. When you see some small pockets of areas which have been developed by session paper number 10, being now called marginalized. They are now eaten into the fund, which was meant for areas which are marginalized. So, I think we must have parameters on how to define marginalized areas. They must put parameters in place. The other thing is, Madam Speaker, this money was supposed to be utilized in such a way that it can have an impact on the development. Our county, currently, we are unable to utilize the one for 22, the financial year for 22-23. It's unable to utilize. Why? Because of the push and pull of the counties, members of parliament. I think there's so many people who have interest in this, so we are unable to do anything. And when we try to put these projects to one single project that will have an impact. An example, I wanted the money for Lagdera, or our people wanted to put into electricity. That is taking the national grid from Garissa to Modogashi. Modogashi currently doesn't have electricity. It is done by diesel generator. And it was, they denied. We have a secretariat here at headquarters administering this fund, which they believe that this money should be cut in small pieces and put in small projects, 3 million, 4 million, those things which completely have no impact. They denied our proposal that we put this money into one single project that can have a very big impact in the constituency. They told us to go back and divide the money into locations, sub-locations. Those are things which will have no impact. After 1 year, it will disappear. An example, if you put a toilet today, or if you have a small water pump today, after 3 years, it will disappear. But if I use that money on electricity, it will help. It will be something which will be there forever. So, I think one thing I will say is that a reform, in fact, we don't need to wait for this bill. We need the secretariat at this headquarters to be reformed immediately. Because their mindset is the that mindset of the county government. They think they work for the county government. They hear from the county government. They don't hear contribution from any other people. They always want to hear from county government. And we know the problem we have with the county government right now. They are never even to account for their own monies. Then why should you give them more money to go and misuse? They go and they normally do what we call the double allocation. Project done, and then they will say that it's done by a collection fund, and the money goes like that. Madam Speaker, the coming policy, I think this is the third policy. I think that policy should be looked into very seriously so that this money can have impact on development on the ground. Because the one which carries in place, I think, is recognizing locations and sub-locations as areas, as a pockets of development. But if we look at it very seriously, those development that they want to put there do not have any impact. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I do support the bill, but with amendment. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Kitui West, Honourable Edith Nyenze. I think your mic is not working. Maybe try another one. Please give another mic. Move to the next one on your left.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also contribute.
Is that better? I think
Is it okay now?
No, move to the next one after that. Move to again to your left.
On my right.
No, your right, sorry. It's my left.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, let me take this opportunity to air my views on the Equalization Fund, which is actually a function provided in the Constitution. Our Constitution of 2010 provides that the national government shall actually use the fund to provide basic services, including water, roads, electricity, health facilities, and such services to marginalized areas. And the intention is actually to ensure that such areas which do not have these facilities are brought to par, or these services are improved in these regions so that they are brought to par with the other regions. And I also note that Commission on Revenue Allocation is responsible for reviewing and determining which areas are marginalized. They're actually the ones who come up with a formula to show how such areas are identified. And these areas also include the areas which are the services which I've mentioned, like where the supply of water is low, also where there is water access is not adequate, attendance in schools is not well as compared to the other regions, sanitation also, and availability of electricity. So these areas are ranked by CRA, and then those ones which fall at the bottom are the ones which are supposed to be marginalized. And after that, now they are the ones several times. But this is one of the areas in our constitution which has not been implemented. And therefore, these regions still keep on lagging behind, even though there is a devolution. They are not at par with the other regions. And in my constituency, I have identified two locations, the Alatani location and Maseki location. And after identifying these areas, actually when I visit these locations, they're always asking me, what happened? We were ranked as being needy, and there's nothing which has happened. So that's why I'm saying this is one of the areas where the 2010 Constitution has not been implemented. So, Madam Speaker, we should actually push this idea of having the funds implemented so that these areas can benefit, because they still lag behind. Madam Speaker, I will also note that even with the devolution, it's also good to compare and see whether devolution has sorted some of the problems in some of the areas, so that we should not have confusion, and we should not And actually, it should not be said that since devolution has come, then we don't need equalization fund. Because this money, which is always set aside, so where does the money go? And while people keep on being marginalized. So with that, Madam Speaker, I support.
Thank you. The Honorable Member, nominated Member, Umul Khair Harun.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the chance to contribute on the matter on the floor. I support the Equalization Fund because of the myriad of challenges that are ongoing in the regions that were earmarked for this particular program.
I think we're having a problem with her mic also. I know today we are challenged. Oh, you can. It's okay now? Okay.
Thank you. I support the Equalization Fund because of the challenges that it is meant to serve. The regions that were earmarked for this particular fund have been lagging behind for so long. And this is a ripple effect issue because if you look at programs like roads, healthcare, especially in the nomadic ASAL regions, we have high cases of insecurity, where the solution is very simple. If a road is tarmacked, IEDs cannot be planted in such roads. And this is part of the money that will solve such problems that we have. The biggest challenge we've had is especially on disbursement. The fund have not even been implemented since. And stretching out to more than the counties it was allocated for will not bring a solution. Proposing, for example, a budget like 6 million cannot do much, but if we're able to have targeted focus, these are regions that will benefit. And marginalization, of course, after the Constitution was amended, had specific counties that were put there, and it was put there for a reason. The regions that don't have these particular resources. And I support the report from the committee because I think this should be the time that this has to be implemented. As a nomadic person, as a child from that region, we've had challenges year in, year out. For example, where we need dams. We have a particular case where we always have overflow from the upper river counties that the water has to flow down to our areas, and it affects the crops. Such can only be solved by having one dam or two dams, and we're done with that. So for me, from where I sit, I support this motion. If we are able to take care of everything that has been highlighted, then we are headed to development. And for that, Madam Speaker, I support the agenda. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Member for Nandi County, Honorable Cynthia Muge.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support this motion from the onset. But of course, Honorable Speaker, I have reservations on a few matters. I appreciate, Honorable Speaker, the efforts that have been put into this bill by the Senate and the committee, Honorable Speaker, in a bid to actually operationalize Article 204 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Honorable Speaker, this bill, going through this bill, I appreciate the committee because they have really tried to cure some of the inequalities that had been inflicted on this bill by the original drafters, Honorable Speaker. And I do not want to go back to the original draft. I appreciate the amendments that have been made. And Honorable Speaker, we all appreciate that this particular bill is supposed to give us the framework for identification, selection, and even implementation of the programs under in the marginalized areas, Honorable Speaker, so that they can be brought back or up in terms of development. Honorable Speaker, I have a problem with CRA in regards to how much time they take to do monitoring and evaluation. The Equalization Fund, Honorable Speaker, is not a birthright to anyone. And in any case, Honorable Speaker, no one likes to be a beneficiary of the Equalization Fund because it is an indicator of the poverty levels in that area. Honorable Speaker, I appreciate also the Constitution for putting in the kind of activities that this fund can actually be able to do. That it has factored in the health facilities, it has also factored in the roads, it has factored in the water and sanitation, and it also has a very important clause, Honorable Speaker, that says, and any other matter that CRA seems or deems fit, that it can be put under the same equalization fund program. Honorable Speaker, what surprises me here is that in the implementation, especially in the advisory board, Honorable Speaker, and even in the committees, you find, Honorable Speaker, that we have people representing the county governments, we have a person representing the NGCDF, we have people representing persons living with disabilities, and Honorable Speaker, even this House has members who are actually representing marginalized groups, Honorable Speaker. Those are the persons, the women and other groups, Honorable Speaker. And you find here, Honorable Speaker, that they are not included in the list of those people who can have a say in regards to the projects that that are undertaken in this fund, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wonder how those other basic services, Honorable Speaker, will be remembered if those people are not put in this particular category, Honorable Speaker. So that, Honorable Speaker, when the office that represents some of the marginalized groups, Honorable Speaker, sits in that particular board, in that particular committee, they are able then to bring the issues that touches on the people who are marginalized that they represent. And Honorable Speaker, I have a problem with that. Again, Honorable Speaker, the issue of where the fund ends. In my county, Honorable Speaker, Tindred constituency is a beneficiary of the equalization fund. Honorable Speaker, if you go to the ground and look at the constituency of Aldai, you will also notice that it is equally marginalized. You find a place like Chebirir, Honorable Speaker, you can spit when you are in Maraba and your saliva will get to Chebirir. But you have to go all the way to Kisumu for you to be able to access that particular place. And Honorable Speaker, you wonder why CRA takes so long to do monitoring and evaluation to be able to remove villages and locations and sub-locations that have so far benefited from this particular equalization program and put other people who are still marginalized, Honorable Speaker. And I think that is a problem with CRA that needs to be addressed urgently so that we have periodic and more subsequent monitoring and evaluation exercises to be able to onboard other marginalized areas. Honorable Speaker, the marginalization that we are talking about in the provision of the Constitution, Article 204, is majorly really structural in terms of they are tangible. There are other issues, Honorable Speaker, that need to be looked at. There are people who come from very far-flung areas that cannot access areas, Honorable Speaker. And I feel like this should be enhanced to be able to cover those kind of issues, Honorable Speaker. Again, Honorable Speaker, I appreciate this bill because it's been able to extend the sunset clause that was capped at the 20 years, which is ending in a few days, in a few years, Honorable Speaker, so they can be able to continue. Why do we support that it continues, Honorable Speaker? Because as much as the equalization fund has been here, the aspect of the monitoring and evaluation has been missing, and therefore, Honorable Speaker, we have not been able to equally bring on board all the sub-locations and the locations that are still marginalized, and therefore they need a boost in terms of development. Honorable Speaker, I also have a problem with identification of the projects. You find that in a place where there's a road that cuts through 3 constituencies, and one of the constituencies is actually listed as a beneficiary of equalization fund. And therefore, the road, Honorable Speaker, when they are doing the budgeting, they make they consider an allocation for a road starting from point A, and it has to go through point B, C, D, E, and F for it to reach the end. But Honorable Speaker, what do? Where the constituency boundary ends, that is where the road ends, Honorable Speaker. And in that manner, Honorable Speaker, we are not able to then really lift the marginalization aspect of that community because you have not gotten them to the desired point, which is point F. And I feel, Honorable Speaker, we should be able to have better understanding of what this equalization fund should be able to achieve in the long run. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, I have always had a problem with the use of the statement in every paper, Honorable Speaker, regarding money that says you have to use the recent audited accounts. Honorable Speaker, if we were to go today into the documents of this country today, Honorable Speaker, to look at the exact last audited accounts of this country,
you will be surprised, Honorable Speaker, to see the year that it was officially audited, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, that means we are actually denying these marginalized areas an opportunity to actually have more money, so that we can then avoid, Honorable Speaker, a situation where our whole constituency that is utterly marginalized is getting 20 million, whereas there is money that could still be channeled, Honorable Speaker, to that particular kitty, so they can be able to do a good project. Again, Honorable Speaker, it should be considered, Honorable Speaker, that this equalization fund should be able to sort out some of the issues that have been pertinent in that area, and not the small issues, Honorable Speaker, because devolution is here, and devolution is supposed, or was supposed, to sort out the small problems that we have in the counties and even the major one. But this equalization fund, Honorable Speaker, it should be looked into critically by the beneficiaries, so that, Honorable Speaker, we are able to set and prioritize one or two major projects that we see, Honorable Speaker, that if we were to allocate money for this project this time around, then we would not have to talk about this problem again in the next coming few days. So, Honorable Speaker, I am really looking forward to the Committee of the Whole House in regards to this particular bill, because I have reservations, Honorable Speaker, and I feel there are better inclusions in some of the clauses in this bill that can be factored in, so that this bill, then, Honorable Speaker, can effectively and efficiently actually serve the purpose that it was meant to serve from the word go. I appreciate the committee, Honorable Speaker, and I support this particular motion.
The Honorable Member for Marsabit County, Honorable Naomi Wako.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important debate on equalization fund. Honorable Speaker, as we know very well that this funds is as a result of Article 204(1) of the Constitution, which consists of 1/2 of revenue collected by national government each year. And it is to promote and it is to enhance what is happening in marginalized areas. As you know, for many years, there are areas that have been marginalized in terms of development, progress, and growth. And especially northern and northeastern part of Kenya have been left behind. And that area has been marginalized in terms of water, road connectivity, health facilities, and electricity. These areas have remained marginalized. And it is through these funds that the county government can be able to improve the area, so that at least we can catch up with the other part of the country. But, Honorable Speaker, however much I support this bill, there is need for us still to review and see how best it can incorporate other areas, and how best all the leaders can also be brought together, so that proper development can be brought to those areas. So far, in some areas, the effect of this is seen, but unfortunately in some areas, it cannot be seen. So we must also advocate for proper accountability. We must also advocate for inclusivity in terms of those who are doing the work, those who will be given the work. They should consider both genders, male and female. They should also consider people living with disability, so that all Kenyans who have the capacity can be able to participate in this. Because however much we are concentrating on the areas that have been marginalized, we also want the individuals in those areas to grow themselves economically. We have women who are in business and who have not had the opportunity to do any tendering and any work, and they have not been even done a lot of contract works. But this gives them the opportunity. So even if we are looking at the counties to grow, we need to also look at the individuals living in those counties, so that they can be grown. And the same method that has been used for the counties to be given this money, we need to look at the marginalized among the marginalized communities, so that we give the opportunity to the people who have a bit of capacity, so that we can grow them, so that they can do businesses, so that they can also get the experience. And as the time goes by, they will be able to graduate from one level to the other. Honorable Speaker, as this august house, there is need for us to look at what is happening do some research and see the areas that we have already covered, the progress that has already been there, and see how we can improve. Honorable Speaker, you can see that the functions of Secretariat have been clearly indicated under on page 11. We can also see that the County Technical Committee, that is where I give a lot of attention, because under Part 4, County Technical Committees, 16, the fund shall finance programs or projects for the provision of the following basic services in areas identified as marginalized areas by Commission on Revenue Allocation. Water and sanitation.
1 moment, Honorable Wako. Honorable members, those members who want to contribute to this particular bill, please press the intervention button. Right now, I just have 3 people on the intervention button. Honorable Meli, Honorable Boni of Kitui Rural, I have Honorable Barto, Honorable Timothy Toretich of Marakwet. Okay, at least I see Basil now, so please do that. You may proceed, Honorable Wako.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. When you look at page 12, you can clearly see the areas that have been identified. And that is water and sanitation. The whole of this week and last week, Honorable Speaker, I've been involved in water tracking out of my own pocket, because in Marsabit, Moyale constituency, and Saku, we have problems of water. And people need serious tracking of water so that they can get some water. And Honorable Speaker, when you come to the roads, some of our areas, we got the main road through during the time of Kibaki. Sorry, my throat is... Thank you. When it comes to roads connectivity, yes, we have the road leading from Isiolo to Marsabit and going beyond. But the other roads that can serve within the town and other places are not there. And that is why I want to urge the county government to be more careful so that we can have the feeder roads done and taken care of. When it comes to health facilities, some people in our place travel for over 300 kilometers to get to health facilities. And sometimes expectant mothers suffer on the road, they deliver on the road, and sometimes they are not even taken care of hygienically. And most of the time, some of them even lose their lives. And that is why we need this. Up to today, in some parts of our country, electricity is not there. And that is why today we advocate for electricity connectivity. And Honorable Speaker, given the opportunity, these funds can transform many areas that have been marginalized. And as I have already said, as we think of the marginalized areas, let us also think of the marginalized groups in those areas. Give opportunity to the youths in those areas to do business. Give opportunity to the people living with disability. Give opportunity to women, because most of the time they are not given a special consideration. And that is why I say there is still need for us to review this and see how best it can serve our communities and bring the transformation that we are imagining of. And I want to thank also our president, because he has that transformative agenda that has the potential to transform all the entire country and also revive the economy of different counties. But unless we are dedicated, unless we are passionate, unless we are bold enough to do things that have not been done in the past, we will not be able to bring the anticipated transformation. Honorable Speaker, I support and I believe that through this, marginalized areas will benefit.
Honorable members, several members have come to me saying that they don't have their cards, so you just give your names to the clerk. All right, next is Honorable Julius Melly, member for Tinderet.
Thank you. Thank you.
What is your point of order? What's your point of order? Honorable Catherine Amaya, we have you. Member for Busia, we have you, but you wait. Yes, you're on the queue.
Yes.
What's your point of order?
Thank you. Madam Speaker, it's more or less, I'm seeking for your guidance. Madam Speaker, when you look at this bill, some time back, and I'm sure you were in this house, we looked at this bill and all members were in agreement that the zoning should be done so that it carries along this bill. Madam Speaker,
that's not a point of order.
that's what I was asking for your guidance, so that we know as members, as we continue debating it, is it of beneficial to the people we represent, or this House amends this bill so that we discuss it as in an amended form, Madam Speaker?
I think it's very important, even for record and for the Hansard and for posterity, for what the sentiments of the members, that they are able to ventilate in the House and they are able to have it recorded in the Hansard, so that at the time when it comes to the committee of the whole, then there is a basis for having reached those amendments. So I think that's important. We can't skip that and assume that members wanted to catapult to the amendments. Yes, I think that will be cutting a shortcut. And not everyone has the benefit, like you do, of what was discussed, maybe at committee stage or at public participation. So I think, and this is a very important bill that has been long overdue, that there's been discussions in the country as far back as 1965. This is it's not something light to be taken lightly, and hence the reason why we are giving members sufficient time to ventilate, and then at the time it comes to committee of the whole, we know how we arrived there. Thank you. Okay. Honorable Melly, you may proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I arise to support this bill. And Madam Speaker, Equalization Fund is a fund that has actually been used by many developed nations to actually uplift areas within their countries to come to par with the rest of the country. Madam Speaker, this is a bill that I want to support a lot, more importantly, knowing that this country is differently developed. It is differently developed because we have regions in this country that have not even seen tap water, no electricity, no roads, motorable roads, and they have no health services or health facilities. Madam Speaker, the bill, we have a number of devolved funds in this country that actually needs a bill of this nature for proper administration. Equalization Fund is supposed to cover areas that have actually been marginalized, not necessarily in terms of aridity or lack of rain or such a kind of thing, but it is because they are actually they are backward in terms of levels of development. I can give several examples, especially in the northeastern region, parts of the Rift Valley, the northern parts, most areas that are actually no development. But I want to chip in and look at it more critically, especially in form of administration. The bill tries to really go into and enumerate and establish several frameworks on how this fund is going to be administered. It sets out an advisory board that particular board seeks to make sure that this fund is utilized well, there is value for money, and in fact, it also makes sure that the projects are identified well. Madam Speaker, if you look at the NGCDF, the county government, among even the NGAF, those are devolved funds. But one of the issues that is facing a number of these default funds is actually the implementation or the administration aspect of it. I want to thank the proponents of this bill because they have gone down to identify problems that are bedeviling the equalization fund. A project that is going to uplift areas in this country, and as the Constitution identified, it says that it shall actually be in use or actually run in force for about 20 years, as envisaged by the Constitution 2010. We are now about 12 years into the Constitution, but the administration of this fund has delayed. Therefore, meaning that about 7 years lapsed without this fund being useful. In fact, the remittances from the National Treasury actually delayed a lot because of lack of legislative processes. So this bill is very important because it will actually make sure that the money is used well, the community are involved in identifying the projects, they participate also in ensuring that these projects are identified and they are followed to completion. Cases where government funds have been given out and the projects identified, and some of them have never been done, are very common in this country, what we call the elephant projects, or even non-existent projects. Madam Speaker, at the Committee of the Whole, I shall be proposing several amendments to this bill, because actually this bill is very good, but there are certain areas where we really need to tighten up so that we make sure that it is accountable to the people and ensure that there is less wastage. The drafters of the NGCDF bill looked at it and they have very less on cost of administration. If you look at equalization fund, the county government funds, the cost of administration of these funds are huge. So I will be asking my colleagues that it is important that these funds are very good, but let them be efficient so that they can be able to reach the people and those projects be brought to usable level. Let me give an example of roads. You have areas where the roads are constructed and they are not into completion. So it is not serving the intended purpose. I have a number of cases where I've read in the Equalization Fund report where contractors have constructed roads, bridges, and a number of projects that are not completed. It is supposed in this bill to make sure that as we go through this bill, we make sure that all the loose ends are tied up and the projects that are identified by the local people or by the people are supposed to be completed on time. Mr. Speaker, there are so many areas in this country where there are no health services, health facilities, dispensaries, health centers. This bill has done a lot. A good example in areas within my constituency where it has part of this fund. We have areas where up to last year, it was unimaginable that there were to have health facilities. But with the availability of this fund, a number of health facilities have been established. A number of access roads through the very serious, hilly, mountainous, rugged areas of Tindred have actually been constructed as a result of this particular fund. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, there is a very good element of electrification within this fund. That the fund is utilized to make sure that areas that do not have connectivity, it is going to form part of what we call counter fund with the Kenya Power and Lighting or the Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy Commission. So, Mr. Speaker, this particular bill is very important in ensuring that this fund, the equalization fund, is administered prudently. And areas where we are seeing a lot of lagunas, especially in terms of membership of the technical committee at the constituency level. Because at the constituency level, we are actually identifying that the sub-county commissioner and the sub-county administrator, who is actually a member of the county government, plus the constituency secretary of the constituency, NGCDF, is also a member. We also need to have included the members with disability. Apart from that, we also need to include very important other stakeholders so that this particular fund is oversighted well. Mr. Speaker, the equalization fund will actually bring, within areas where there are no schools, classrooms, and many other things, the health facilities are not there. It shall actually cover that. Another aspect which I want to bring to the attention of the House, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of bank accounts. It has actually gone down to elucidate how the accounts of this fund are going to be managed, who are the signatories, when are the funds going to be released, and more importantly, how are the projects going to be oversighted by the various committees. So this bill is very important for this House, and I want to urge the members that we support it, and we bring more amendments to make it more, to strengthen it, and to really make sure that this particular bill passes. And the last area where I want to put a lot of emphasis is the issue of water. Water, I think all members know, is one of the basic needs in our society. It is a requirement that every home in this country needs to have water. And if we are going to use these funds very well, it shall actually enable our homes, our villages, and even areas that are arid. We can drill boreholes using this particular fund. I support, and therefore I ask my colleagues to support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Meli, before you said, what did you say about clause 4 of the bill?
Yes, on clause 4 of the bill, Chair, I did identify an issue there. And I think the bill states that the fund shall, pursuant to Article 2041 of the Constitution, consist of 1/2 of all revenue collected. And I think I did mention that we shall be proposing some amendment, because this means that this fund is going to have 1/2 of the total revenue of the national government, which is exceedingly high. So those are some of the amendments I'm going to bring, Mr. Speaker, so that this fund remains within the 2% of the revenue that we collected. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that, because I doubt we intended equalization would be even more than the devolved funds allocation. Yeah, the MP for Kitui Rural.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Let me say on onset, I support this bill because it's a very important bill. Mr. Speaker, the bill seeks to provide for the administration structures for the management of equalization fund. And through this bill, equalization fund and reversal board and other committees will be formed. Mr. Speaker, this fund is supposed to provide basic services like water, roads, health facilities, and electricity. Mr. Speaker, it's a pity. It's a pity. Up to now, some areas don't have these facilities. It's a pity. And going back to session paper number 10 of 1996, one of the objectives of this session paper was to promote equal opportunities to all Kenyans. It's a pity, as we speak, 41% of Kenyans don't have access to safe drinking water. Many people are walking long distances to fetch water. For example, in my area, there are some places where people have to walk for 70 kilometers go to the river. Going to the river and coming back, that is a whole day activity. And one time I was visiting some people in that area. And they told me even to produce children has become a problem, because they have to wake up very early in the morning to go and look for water. Mr. Speaker, every facilities are either not there or they are not in useful conditions. There are some constituencies here which do not even have a single kilometer of roads, of tarmac road. And even the Maram roads are in their conditions. Electricity connectivity, I think most of us, is below 22%, which is really very disturbing. And Speaker, you know, when we were going for devolution, we thought devolution will really improve services in these counties. But what has come out is that devolution has also become a curse, because most of the funds are being misused at county level. It's like we devolved corruption to the county level. Therefore, this equalization fund is going to help and supplement those services which are being provided by the county government. One of the good proposals in this, this bill is for the establishment or creation of an account at CBK by the fund, Equality Fund, Fund Advisory. This establishment of the fund is going to reduce the control of the fund from the National Treasury. Speaker, you know most of the funds have died because of the hard hand of Treasury, not releasing the funds to these funds. For example, now we have a problem with the CDF. Up to now, the money which we have got, I really don't know, and we are remaining with around 4 months to the end of financial year, and we have not got the money. So if CDF was like, this money has to go to an account in central bank, and we'll be able to get it from there, we will not be facing what we are facing, Mr. Speaker. So to me, this is a very important proposal in this. In any case, in the last years, the funds which were supposed to go to these areas, it has not gone. I think these areas are under over 10 billion shillings. I don't know when they are going to get. So removing the control of utilization fund, the funds from Treasury, it is a very welcome idea. Speaker, let the people who are going to manage this fund work day and night and make sure the above services are provided in these areas. Mr. Speaker, the formulation of marginalization formula should be done without interference. This is an area we need to look at. It's unfortunate. The people who are the commissioners who are in CRA, most of them are politicians with the different interests. And this is the area which we need to check, to make sure that the areas which deserve to get these funds are the areas which are going to get the funds. Not anybody, not personal interest, not partisan interest, not because I'm a member of the commission, I want my area to get this fund. These funds should go to the deserving areas, like Northeastern and also district. On this formula, I think it's very important to use quality data. And I've been championing for funding of Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Kenya National Bureau of Statistics is the government agency which is entrusted in collecting, analyzing, validating, and disseminating of official statistics. If it's not funded well, then we are not getting quality data so that we can be able to do the formula. Mr. Speaker, those few remarks I support. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, I am going to contribute on this this bill with a very heavy heart. Mr. Speaker, the very foundational object and spirit of having an equalization fund was to correct the historical marginalization of sections of this country. The idea is to see the resource allocations that were done from 1963 until 2010 and now begin bringing those areas where there was no government investment up to speed with the rest of the country. Up to speed with the rest of the country. This is not dealing with contemporary poverty in pockets in everywhere in the country. Historical marginalization. And at the time of the inception of this particular provision in the Constitution, and I can tell you there are many Kenyans who voted for this precisely because of that. We only had 14 counties in mind. Only 14 counties in mind. That were basically starved of resource allocation because of, among other things, the sessional paper of 1965. And those counties were Tana River, Marsabit, Mandera, Taita Taveta, Kilifi, Kwale, Samburu, Isiolo, Turkana, West Pokot, Garissa, Wajir, Lamu, Kitui, and Baringo. Kitui and Baringo. We have now convoluted the whole thing and used the power structure at the time with the people who came to power to make it translatable to every pocket in the country. Mr. Speaker, this thing has lost its meaning. I was part of the framers of the Constitution, and the idea was to take public goods to those places, roads, hospitals, education institutions, electricity, water, to the areas that never got that for all those years since independence. Today, areas like in Mwingi, where I go through myself when I live here, Sekuru, Ngune, all those places, Ukasi, which has never seen development for all those years. And then when you go, the farther you go into the north, who's got a point of information? Yes, proceed and give me the information that you have. Yes. Oh, yes, I need the information that... Okay. I said you should ordinarily ask me whether I want to be informed because I'm... Keep on saying point of information, you'll be recognized. Don't worry. You better talk very loud and then the speaker will hear you. Anyway. No. Keep on saying point of order, point of information until you get the opportunity. What's wrong with you? Now, Mr. Speaker, this reminds me of something in the 60s when we had the civil rights movement in the States. Mulyungi. No, you say point of information, not out of order.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my neighbor, Mheshimiwa Farah, for appreciating the problems we have in Mwingi. Information. And the information is to thank him because he seems to be very vast and conversant and very knowledgeable about Mwingi because he passes there, he's my neighbor. And I want you to continue giving the information so that Mwingi can benefit from this fund. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I hasn't given... Yeah. Now. I am reminded of something that happened. Most of you are very young people, including my brilliant professor next to me here. In the 60s, there was a civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was basically to address slavery and the effects of slavery and this serious marginalization and oppression the black man suffered